What's up, YouTube? Gotten a lot of questions about buckshot. So here's some double-aught buckshot from Hornady. It says it's .330 diameter. Sold in 5-pound boxes. It's almost empty, actually, but I've got enough pellets for what I want to show you guys. And so if you want to load your own buckshot, the first thing is a lot of folks will tell you Hornady's buckshot is undersized. Double-aught buck is supposed to be .330 inches, which it says right on the box. And I'm going to take the old Mitutoyo caliper here and just measure a few. That's .332. That's .334, 335, 331 if you kind of wiggle it around and look for like the low spot. It is not perfectly round. There's .330 on that piece. So I don't know where this myth comes from. Everybody always says Hornady's buckshot. There's .333, .334, .332. Everybody always says Hornady's buckshot is undersized, but when I measure it myself, it comes up to be right around .330. Actually, from what you see from my small sample here, it's actually above .330. So I don't know where that myth comes from. So that's the first thing. The second thing is you need to find some buckshot load data. I actually have a buckshot manual. It comes from Ballistic Products Incorporated. You can search them up on the web. They sell a buckshot manual. They also have a load of the week. The guy that runs their site does a load of the week, and I've downloaded 4 or 5 of those that he actually posts online for free. Now, those are actually my favorite buckshot recipes. Most of those use the powder called a long shot. Okay, so anyway, let's take some buckshot. So I've got an empty hull here, and I've got a wad here. So if you want to load buckshot at home, you're going to have a couple of options. Option 1 is to load with a standard wad. Okay, and most of your standard wads are going to have a fairly firm shot cup like this. So this is a GTT1 wad, and it's what I use for buckshot. And they're going to stack 2 at a time. So let me show you that again. So you see 8 pellet buck and 10 pellet buck recipes. This is a good wad for those because those 2 will fit in there very nicely as I catch my buckshot. And then those 2 will fit in like that. Okay. And so you'll see they kind of go across from each other. Okay. Focus, camera. There we go. There's a pour them out in my hand. Get this to focus. Okay, so we drop the next 2 in, and they'll sit like that. And we'll drop the next 2 in, and they'll sit like that. And that is a very good, let me show you how that looks column height-wise. That is a very good wad for an 8-pellet buck. And so you can do an 8-pellet buck, boom. Okay, with the appropriate powder charge, using the appropriate load data, and the appropriate hull. And then, of course, the way this works, if you're loading this on your press, and I'm not doing this at my press today, you'll drop your powder. Your shot hopper will be empty. Empty. So you'll drop your powder, you'll shove your wad in, and then with the wad in the hull, in the press, you'll drop those in just like I did on camera. So I'll show it to you one more time. With the wad in the hull, so I go ahead and drop that in like there's powder in there, okay? You'll literally drop in 2, and they'll line up for you, and then you'll drop in 2 more, and make sure that those are 90 degrees offset. Drop in 2 more, and then drop in 2 more. Boom. Now you're ready for your crimp. I use a roll crimp for all my buckshot, and the reason being is because then your column height doesn't really matter. With your 6 and your 8-point crimps, your column height is exceptionally important. If you're off by a 1/16 of an inch, either your crimp will open up or your crimp will collapse in. With a roll crimp, if you're, okay, I'm off by an 1/8 of an inch, it just rolls a little deeper, rolls a little shallower. So you put your overshot card in here, you roll crimp this, boom, you've got buckshot, okay? So that's one way to do it. That's an 8 pellet, or if you have a long enough wad, you can drop 2 more in and do a 10 pellet. And I have an 8 pellet and a 10 pellet recipe that I use. Both of those use long shot, and then I have an 8 pellet that uses universal. And I got all of that from Ballistic Products Incorporated's website. but they also have it in their Buckshot manual. Okay, so that's method 1. And hang on, and I'm going to dump all this out and show you method 2. All right, so option 2, a lot of your popular buckshot is 9 pellet buck. So you find a 9 pellet buck recipe. Now, they sell what's called a brush wad, and a brush wad is going to be just this cushion part with no shot cup. Okay, so it's just going to be this right here. Okay, and what you can do actually is you can take an existing wad. So I've got just a razor knife here. You can take an existing wad and you can cut this guy, right? So I'm just going to cut this all the way down to the bottom. Okay, all the way down to the bottom of the wad here. Okay, and then you can, I like to peel these back so I can get in there better. Peel those back, and once you get the first one off, it's pretty easy. Okay, and you want a good sharp knife for this. Okay, we're going to cut these petals off. So cut that off. Cut that off. All right, something like that. Okay, so pretty close. So this is a DIY brush wad, and I'm going to show you why that's important. Okay. So you cut your shot cups off and do it somewhere where your wife won't yell at you when there's plastic all over the floor. So don't do it in your living room. So this would be the equivalent of a brush wad, which is just a cushion. Okay. And just like before, you put this in your press, you deprime, you reprime. If it's an old hull, if it's a new already primed hull, you'll drop your powder. And then you'll put this wad in the same way you normally would. So you want this cupped end down, okay, because that's your gas seal. You'd put that in just like normal. And when you take away the thickness of that shot cup, watch what happens. Okay? 1, 2, 3. And you see your buckshot lines up in a nice little triangle. Okay? And then you take your next one and you drop it in 1, 2, 3. And it lines up in a nice little triangle. And then you take your third one. Get that 9th pellet out here. 1, 2, 3. And that is how you make 9 pellet buck. Okay? It lines up in little triangles in there. And then the same thing, you're going to put an overshot card and then roll crimp this. Voila, 9 pellet buck. Now, some folks will use what's called a wrapper for this, which is a clear wrap that they sell. And what that does is that keeps these lead balls from actually riding down your barrel. Because you will, if you shoot buckshot like this with no wrapper, you will get lead streaks down your barrel. So you will lead your barrel, and you have to scrub that out. So just an FYI, if you load buckshot, if you load 9 pellet buck, if you get a 9 pellet buck recipe, it's going to call for a brush wad. And you can use pretty much any shot wad. So your data on your shot wad is going to have 2 dimensions. It's going to have the overall length, and it's going to have the shot cup length. Okay, so if you take the overall length, subtract the shot cup length, that's going to be your cushion wad length. If your cushion wad length is pretty much the same as a brush wad, you can just cut these off and use it like a brush wad and not order new wads. So I don't load a lot of buckshot, so I don't want to order 500 brush wads. So I take the GTT1 from Nobel Sports, which is a really cheap wad. I've also used clay busters. Just cut these little leaves off here. Cut the little wings off of the shot cup. Voila, 9 pellet buck. You have your own brush wad. Okay. Roll crimp this. That way your column height is not critical. And then make sure you use appropriate powder charge under your cushion wad. And that's it. That's how you load 9 pellet buck. So anyway, I've had some questions about how to load buckshot. That's how you do it. It's not complicated. Really, the only thing the press is used for if you're using new wads is to drop your powder charge. For my buckshot recipes, I actually don't use my press at all because I actually weigh my powder charges. And so I actually weigh out a powder charge, drop this in by hand, drop these in by hand, and then roll crimp it. None of that occurs on the press. And the reason I do that is because my buckshot might be used for home defense. And so I like to weigh out my powder charges on that. It's not plinking ammo. If you've watched my channel much, you know that for me, plinking ammo, which is just going to the range and shooting, I'm not really particular about the being extremely consistent and extremely accurate. It just needs to go bang. But for things like this, it does have to be extremely consistent. It does have to be, in my mind, as perfect as I can get it. And so I do weigh my powder charge, put this wad in by hand, drop my pellets in by hand, and then roll crimp with a roll crimper, and I've got a video on that. Okay, voila, homemade buckshot. So if you have any questions, leave them in the comments. I'll try to answer them. Thanks, guys.